Good morning. I was told that there's a special before me and a special after me, so by default, I'm special as well. Yes, the laughter says it all. I heard about a young man who was traveling for business, and he was headed down this 2-lane highway, and he was out in the middle of nowhere, out in the middle of a very, very country setting, very rural. And as he's driving along, he sees this field out on the right-hand side. And it's a huge, wide-open field. It's a break from all the trees that he'd been looking at for miles and miles. And in the middle of that field, there's a really beat-up, busted-up, broken-down-looking shed. It's just really nasty metal shed. It's all but standing, basically. If a strong wind blows, it might knock it down. And he looks at that, and it's the only thing interesting for the past 15 miles or so. And on the side of that shed, written with big white letters, are the words, "I love you, Captain." And he thought, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. And he keeps on driving. A couple weeks later, he has the opportunity to go back into the same area. And he's thinking about that message. He's thinking, this is pretty neat. He's preparing this time. He's got his phone. He's going to take a picture because he thinks it's pretty cool. And he gets into the area, and he's surprised and disappointed both to find that the message isn't there. It's gone. In fact, the shed isn't there. It's been torn down and moved out of the way. And so he's discouraged, but not for long. Because just about a quarter mile down the road, there's a sign posted on the side of the road that says, "I still love you." Our message this morning, John 3:16, it's like that. It's like that. It's a message of love for all the world to see. Now, if you think about it, we see John 3:16 all over the place. I remember when I was 10 years old and watching a football game, Monday Night Football, and I see the sign, John 3:16, somebody's holding it, and I'm wondering, what's that have to do with football? I'm curious. And I went and looked, and I was like, that doesn't do anything with football. I thought maybe Daniel and the Lions then, right? Because it was a Lions game. Something that's connecting. It's not connecting the dots, but we see it everywhere. We see it at football games, we see it at basketball games, baseball games, you name it, sporting events. We see those signs all over. We see them on bumper stickers, we see them on billboards. I even heard of an eye doctor who uses John 3:16 for his eye exams. He just puts it in, and I just had my eye exam recently, so I know what that would be like. It's all blurry, 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 blurry. Tell me when you can read that, blurry, blurry. Hey, it says John 3:16. So he actually uses that, and it gives him an opportunity to share the gospel with those patients who are willing to listen. They're stuck in his chair. I would just be like, can you see? It's much better, 1 or 2. How about 5? How about, can you see the Lord now? How about 10? I don't think they have those videos. That's terrible. Well, I'm sure they don't do that. But we love this verse as Christians. We love it because it sums up the whole message of the Bible. God loved the world so much, He loved all of us, that He sent His Son so that we don't have to perish. We love this verse. And as I thought about it this week, I tried to think what I could possibly bring here and share with you, because this is, let's face it, this is perhaps the most popular Bible verse, perhaps of all time. And we're in our 3:16 series because it's March, it's the 3rd month, and there are some beautiful 3:16 passages. We couldn't have a 3:16 sermon series without going to John 3:16. And I know you guys are, well, you know it. So I got up here and I'm thinking, what do I do? What do I say? You've been there, you've done that, you've got the shirt, right? What can I possibly bring in here? And I searched around trying to find some interesting illustrations and find some commentaries. One preacher that I read said that he believes he could preach on John 3:16 every Sunday for the entire rest of his time in ministry. I'm not that creative. Want to tie the message of love into every sermon? Yes, that's easy to do, because even last week's message, which I heard a little bit about, I heard that some were saying that I was writing it just for that person, and I was fussing. I wasn't. I honestly don't even know who those people were. They just, again, guess what? They were rumors. Shocking. But they got back to me. It was still a message in love. We need to admonish one another. That's what we're supposed to do in the church. And we do it in love. Everything we do in love. And so when I looked at this message, I thought, how do I bring it? How do I share it? And I just started to break it down. It's Bible College 101. You just preach it 101. You take the verse and you just break it down into chunks. Word by word, phrase by phrase, and you go through it. And that's what I want to do. That's what I want to share with you this morning. I want to break it down because I'm hoping you will see an even deeper beauty that this message really has for us. And so first we start off with, God so loved the world. It's the heart of the gospel. It really is. It's that message of love that permeates from one cover of the Bible to the other cover. And it's not that we love God, that we're pursuing God and going after Him. It's that He desires us. 1 John 4:10 says this. This is love. Not that we loved God, but that He loved us and sent His Son as an atoning sacrifice. And 1 John 4:19 says, we love because He first loved us. He so loved. I love that because there's no way to render that amount of love in the Greek, and so the translator just wrote in there so. It's so love. It's an emphasis, and it doesn't feel like much of an emphasis, does it? Because you say something to me and I'm like, so? Right? It seems like the opposite. But it's an emphasis. It's in there because He so loved the world. We don't know how to put it in words. We can't possibly describe it. He just so loved everyone. But you know, there's a commentator by the name of John Gill. And I read a commentary from him on this verse this past week. He doesn't believe it. He says, in essence, what he says is, this verse doesn't mean every person. It means God's elect over here. He loves them. Those are God's elect. Yes. It's a Calvinistic teaching. Anybody from Calvin background? Okay, you should raise your hands if you want to. You don't have to. Nobody? Okay. All right. I got one was brave enough to go, yeah. So there's that Calvinistic teaching there, that predestination, which Paul says, God, those He foreknew, He predestined, okay? And so that Calvinistic teaching comes in over here and says, I know what he's saying. He's saying there are people here, and they're predestined, and they're going to heaven. And there are people here, and they're predestined to go to hell. And it doesn't matter if you're in this group, what you do, what you say, what you think, what you feel. You can be a serial killer. You can be the most horrible, vile person on the planet. You can hate God. You can curse God. But if you're in this group, it doesn't matter. You are predestined to go to heaven no matter what. And the flip side is this group over here. You are in this group and you're predestined to go to hell. That doesn't matter if you're Mr. Rogers or Captain Kangaroo. You can be the most righteous person on the planet. You could be a shining example of what it means to be the hands and feet of Jesus Christ. You can love God with all your heart, with all your soul, your mind, and strength. Love others as yourself. You can deny yourself and take up the cross daily. You can do all those things, but you're over here, so I'm sorry, you're going to hell. That's their teaching on predestination. That's their theology. Now, I believe Paul meant what he said, that those God foreknew, He predestined. And here's what I believe, and many other scholars. Not that I'm a scholar, I'm just saying there are other scholars that I agree with. Let's rephrase that. And here's the gist, that yes, there's a group over here that are predestined, that God foreknew, and guess what? They're called Christians. And it doesn't mean that it's one out of every four is going in this group and the other ones, I'm sorry. It means here's a group. God says there's going to be a group. There are going to be people here called Christians because they're going to be the ones who follow my Son. And I'm going to make sure that they have a way into heaven. It doesn't mean He forces you in the group. You can choose to walk away. You can choose to be there. So, John Gill's not saying that, though. John Gill is saying, look, God so loved the world right here. These guys, the elect only. But that takes away all the joy and all the power of this verse. It says, God so loved the world. All of us. All people. It doesn't mean just the ones who are good looking. I'd be out. It doesn't mean all the ones who are rich. I'd be out. Famous. Again, I'd be gone. It's not just the select few. It's the whole entire world. Everyone who's damaged by sin and deformed by the corruption of the world. I read about a girl in the second grade. Her name was Mary Ann. I won't give her her last name because I don't remember it, but I'm going to say this. And she was born with a cleft palate. All right? She knew she was different right away once she started school because the kids started asking her what was going on, why she looked the way she did. And this is what she even said. I'll quote what she said. This is how she described herself. A little girl with a misshapen lip, crooked nose, lopsided teeth, and garbled speech. That was her own view of herself. She was convinced that no one outside of her family would ever love her. And so when kids asked her what happened, she said, I fell on a piece of glass and I cut my lip. And she felt that it was much more acceptable to look that way because of an injury, because of an accident, and not that she was born different than anyone else. Well, her teacher knew the truth. And her teacher really loved this little girl. And every year they had a hearing test. And it was quite simple. The teacher would stay here at the desk, and the student would stand about 20 feet or so away at the door. And the teacher would whisper something, and all the child had to do was listen and then repeat it back. I think I actually did this in my own first grade class. And so she would say things like, the sky is blue. And so you'd hear it, say, the sky is blue, or, you have new shoes. Something like that. She would say those things, and all you had to do was repeat it back, and that was school back in the day, guys. You knew you passed if you could hear it. So, when Mary Ann gets up there, she's standing at the door, and she's surprised at what the teacher says. And the teacher whispers, I wish you were my little girl. That's the beauty of this verse. Because that's how God feels about us. When we're deformed by sin and damaged by worldliness, God says, I wish you were my son. I wish you were my daughter. Because God so loved the world. God so loved you and me. Point 2, that he gave his only begotten son. He didn't just create things and then stand back and just stare and watch from a distance. No, I'm sorry, Bette Midler has it wrong. He's not watching us from a distance. Philippians 2, verses 5 through 8 says this, in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. You see, the beauty of this message is that God didn't send a servant. He didn't send a prophet. He didn't send an angel. He came down himself to dwell among us. John 1:14 says, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. I mean, Jesus was even given the name Emmanuel, which means God with us. You see, the beauty of this, and I don't know that we celebrate it, I know we don't celebrate it enough as Christians, is that God actually came here and put on flesh. He looked like one of us, and he loved us that much to do that. God so loved the world, all of you, and me, that he sent his only begotten Son. Point 3, that whoever should believe in him should not perish, but would have everlasting life. See, there was a problem. God knew there was a problem. It reminds me of this elderly couple who went to McDonald's. They went for dinner, and it was family night. And so there are young families everywhere. This couple, they're in their early 80s, sweet couple, And they get in line, and because it's family night, the place is packed. And they're waiting about 15 minutes to be able to actually place their order. And they're being looked at by all these other younger couples, kids running all over, they're standing there holding hands, and they're smiling at each other, and they're having conversations, and little hugs, and touching each other. So you can see they've been together for a long, long time. They have a wonderful relationship. And they slowly make their way to the counter, and they place their order, and the man takes out some cash, and he hands over a couple dollars, and he's even pulling out change, pennies right down to the penny, and gives it to the guy, and then they take their tray, and they're walking over, they find a little table just for two, and they sit down across from each other, and everybody's watching. Everybody's watching what they're doing. They sit there, and they hold hands, and they thank God for the meal, and they pray over that, and they smile at each other. And then the man takes the food out of the bag, and he opens it up, and he just got a hamburger, and a small fry, and a small drink. That's all they bought. That's all they got. And so he cuts it in half, and so it's half for him, half for his wife, and they take the fries. It's a small fry, so there's not many in there. And they count it out, exactly. This many for him, and this many for her, identical again. And then the small drink right in between them, so they can share the drink. And they're setting this beautiful example. And these young couples are watching this. But it was a little disturbing for one particular young couple. And this young man came over, and he pleaded with this woman, let me buy you a meal. Let me buy you your own meal. He said, it doesn't hurt me at all. I would love to do this. I would love to bless you in this way, because I can already tell that you are going to be just an amazing blessing for us tonight, just as a family, to watch you guys interact. And she said, no, I'm okay. We share everything. And again, he said, are you sure? I don't mind. It's not a problem. I would love to do this. I'll go buy you whatever meal you would like. She said, no, it's okay. Thank you. We share everything. So he walks away, and he starts to notice that the man is eating his food, and the woman's just sitting. And she might reach over and take a drink every now and then and set the cup back down. And he's starting to wonder, hey, maybe I got through to her. Maybe she really does want this meal. Maybe she's a little upset. Maybe I'll try again. And so he goes walking over, and he says, I really just... I want to buy you your own meal. Please let me do this for you. I notice that he's eating and you're not, and I don't understand. What are you waiting for? She said, we share everything. And he said, well, I get that, but he's eating and you're not. What's the problem? What are you waiting for? She looked at him and she said, I'm waiting for the tea. Just sit down and shut. That is true love. Now, this man perceived a problem. He perceived the problem to be that they didn't have enough money to have their own meals. But the real problem, if we can even argue that it was a problem, was that they only had one set of teeth to share. That's not really a problem, though, is it? I guess unless you're germophobic like me, then there's no way. You get all the salads, I'll take all the liquids. We're good. I can drink shakes the rest of my life and be fine with that. I don't need to share the tea. But it's that perspective. He's looking at what he thinks is wrong, and it's not. And he's missing the whole point. And we do the same thing. We have a problem. God sent his son because we have a problem. But we don't see the real problem. We see something else and say that is our problem. John F. Kennedy said this: our problems are man-made. Therefore, they can be solved by man. Now, I will admit that I don't believe that President Kennedy was equating that statement to our relationship with God. But if you think about it, that really does sum up pretty much every other religion on this planet. Man has a problem. Man created that problem. Man can solve the problem. And that's it. And that's the concept that we get. But what's the problem? The problem is sin. And we can't do much about it. I mean, we can, okay, don't get me wrong, but to a certain degree, and then after that, it's out of our hands. It's all up to God. You know, we kind of look at it as balancing the scales, right? I have friends, I have family, and they'll probably be watching, so I gotta be careful. I have family that think that way. That I have all these bad deeds over here on this scale, you know, and all these things that I've done, but you know what? If I just do enough good deeds, I'll just weigh it down, and it'll come down to here, and eventually they'll measure out, they'll balance. And if I do enough good deeds, well, they'll be down here, and then I'll weigh all the bad that I've ever done, and I'm good to go. Now the problem with that, it's remotely realistic that you can do good things, yes, and feel better about the bad things, okay? But you're going to get to a certain point and there's no way it's going to balance. It just doesn't happen because you have sin over here that we just can't remove. We can cover it up. We can bury it. We can try to do enough good deeds so that we outweigh it, but it's never going to go away. It's there. And the shame and the guilt just doesn't go away. Those are only things that God can take away 100%. And so we get this mindset that we just do enough good deeds and we'll outweigh it, and we're all set, we're good to go. But we can't. We can't. There's a problem, yes. But only God has the solution. We can only do just so much, and we're stuck. We can't earn it. We can't buy it. We can't outweigh it. All we can do is admit it, confess it, and give it to Christ, because we are cleansed by His blood. It's the only way to remove the sin. It's the only way that goes away. You know, I heard about a missionary, an American guy. His name was David Morse, and he went to India. He was in India for about 3 years. And while he was there, he met one of the local men. And if I tell you his name, I'll mess it up because I kept looking at him and I kept coming back to Rambo. Rambo. Like, it's not Rambo. And so we're just going to say that it's just an Indian man named R. Okay? Because I will mess it up and I'll get off track really bad. But he became really good friends with this man over that 3-year period. Now that guy was a pearl diver in India. In fact, he was one of the best. He would go out in a boat, he would dive down underwater, holding his breath, he would find pearls, he'd pick them up, he'd come up to the surface, he would take those pearls, make them all super pretty, and he would sell them. That's how he made a living and supported his family. This American missionary tried for 3 years to get this man to surrender to Christ. And the man kept saying no. He kept refusing. He kept saying, I can't do it because your Christian way, the way that you're telling me, it's not right. It doesn't work. I'm a proud man. I work hard. I want to earn my way in. I want to know that I deserve to get in there. I don't want to just be sitting around in heaven and thinking that I'm here because somebody took pity on me. He says, I want to earn it. I want to work for it. And you know, David kept telling him over and over, it's not something we earn. Okay, it's a free gift from God. He's just ready to hand it to you. It's free. Just accept it. No, he wouldn't accept it. Well, there came a time when this man decided he was going to go to Delhi. He was going to go on this religious journey. He was going to walk all the way there on his knees. Now, it's about a 900-mile trek is what he's looking at. And so he's telling David about it. David's saying, dude, no. It's a terrible idea. First of all, you're going to do this on your knees. They're going to be cut open. They're going to be bloody. You're probably going to get some sort of blood poison. It's not good. This is not a good thing. You shouldn't do this. Plus, listen, just accept Christ. And again, he kept refusing with, no, it just seems too easy. I want to earn it. I want to work for it. I know that by me traveling this distance, that I will be rewarded for what I'm doing. He says, but before I go, I have a gift for you. And he pulls out this amazing pearl. Probably the most beautiful pearl you could ever see. And he hands it to him. He says, I want you to have this. Because you don't know this, but I used to have a son. was the best pearl diver in all of India. And he could dive deeper and hold his breath longer than anyone. And he always, always came back with the most beautiful pearls. And when he brought this one back, he had to dive down deeper than normal. And when he got to the surface, he stopped breathing. And we tried, but we couldn't bring him back to life. And so this is all I have. But I want you to have it. Because you've been a friend to me over the past years like no one else. You've been here when I've been sick. You've been talking to me when I needed someone to talk to. And I want you to have this. Is all I have to remember my son by, and I want you to have it because I don't think I'm coming back once I take my journey. And David sat there for a moment, really took this in and what was happening, and he saw it as a good opportunity to continue to minister to him. And so he said, no, I won't accept it. But I'll give you $10,000. He said, you're crazy, right? I don't want any money from it. I don't think that this could be sold at all. I wouldn't take all the money in the world for this. This was my son's. And I want you to have it as a free gift. He said, no. I'll give you $15,000 for it. And if it's not enough, I'll work for the rest so that I can earn it. And the man said, you're not listening to me. It's a free gift. I just want you to take this. And David looked at him and he said, don't you realize everything I just told you is what you've been saying to God over these past years? It's a free gift, guys. We can't earn it. We can't buy it. There's no way. It's the greatest love ever because God so loved all of us that he sent his only Son. Whoever believes in him should not perish, but would have everlasting life. That, guys, that is the greatest love. Let's pray. Father, you are so glorious. I thank you, Father, for all you do.